Our keynote speaker this morning, ladies and gentlemen, has been described as America's only female comedian with a pulpit. In late August, when keynote speakers for this event were being considered, the committee came across a tweet which made the choice really rather easy. The tweet said, "Sabbatical winding down, bought a motorcycle, took flying lessons, learned to rodeo, and went fishing a lot, about ready to preach again." She is a trial lawyer turned stand-up comedian and a Baptist minister, and we really want to welcome very warmly Reverend Susan Sparks. I really have to tell you about her. That's not enough of an introduction. That's the reason for the chairs. After 10 years as a lawyer, moonlighting as a stand-up comedian, Susan left her practice and spent 2 years on a solo trip around the world, including working with Mother Teresa's mission in Calcutta. She climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, and she drove the Alaska Highway. And upon returning home, she then, after this, entered the Union Theological Seminary in New York. And she earned a Master of Divinity, and she wrote an honors thesis, as you could probably expect, on humor and religion. Reverend Sparks is currently the senior pastor of the historic Madison Avenue Baptist Church in New York, and she's the first woman pastor in its 165-year history. She's been featured in just about every magazine that you could expect, whether it be the New York Times or Huffington Post and all of the networks, and she also has been featured in numerous comedy clubs. Her book, Laugh Your Way to Grace, Reclaiming the Spiritual Power of Humor, was named as one of the best spirituality books of 2010. It's really a joy to welcome her to Chicago, ladies and gentlemen, Reverend Sue.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Oh, what a beautiful breakfast and what an amazing gathering this is. Well, thank you so much to the Chicago Sunday Evening Club, to all of our sponsors, and to all of you for coming out on this rainy Friday morning. And I also want to say a special word of thanks to Lester for doing a beautiful job with our emceeing this morning. Let's give him a round of applause. I'm honored to be here. And of course, I have to give a special shout out to our sponsors who had the courage and the fortitude to invite as their keynote an ex-lawyer turned stand-up and a Baptist minister. Certainly Baptist being the scarier of the three. I myself was raised Southern Baptist. Please don't all run for the door at once. And yeah, Southern Baptists, they can toe a pretty hard line, but one of the good things you can say about them is you can always count on their theology to be short and sweet, like their idea of heaven. You ain't Southern Baptist, you ain't coming. When you think about it, that's a lot of people not coming. Last count, I think that's about 6.5 billion people not coming. You look at a world map, that's like every landmass on the face of the globe not coming, except Texas and Alabama. Which should make us all rethink our answer to the question, do you want to go to heaven? I'm not so sure. I don't know. I know some of y'all are thinking, well, you're a minister, you shouldn't be talking bad about people, and you're right, but I'm also a Southerner, too, from Charlotte, North Carolina, and we have a little tool down south. You can say anything you want about anybody you want, as long as you end the phrase with, bless your heart. Yeah, just a little tool to remember. My friend down here knew exactly. Are you a Southerner? You from? A bomber, okay, yep. So from these humble beginnings, I started this, what seems like a very crazy career path, and I guess it was. I was a trial lawyer for 10 years, and about 2 or 3 years into that career, I started studying stand-up, which does sound kind of funny, but honestly, when you think about it, humor, when done right, creates rapport and trust. And as a trial lawyer, that's what I had to learn to do too with those juries. So in the law, it made perfect sense. Now, 10 years later, when I decided to go to seminary, now that's when it started getting complicated. I feel like we're family here. Can I just tell you all the pain of being in seminary as a comedian? Oh my goodness. I mean, those professors, they were not ready to teach theology to a comedian. Bless their hearts. They sure weren't ready to teach Hebrew to a Southerner. Baruch atah Adonai, y'all. I thought I did pretty well, but, you know, notwithstanding the pain and the difficulty, I went ahead and pushed through, and, you know, and here I am today. I'm a minister and I'm a professional stand-up, and I've got this career going, and still people ask me, you know, they're like, oh, I love what you do. It's so interesting and creative. Why? And it's fascinating to me because after years of doing this career, of a double career as a minister and a stand-up, I have found that humor is the most powerful tool we have in this life. And if nothing else, it's the one tool that I believe that can empower us to live our faith in everyday life. I mean, here's the one-line summary of why that is. And if you're on your BlackBerry, come back to me just for this 1 second so you get this. If you can laugh at yourself, you can forgive yourself. And if you can forgive yourself, you can forgive others. And there it is. Now, here's said another way. Maybe you've heard the old saying, you only need 2 tools to get through in life. WD-40 and duct tape. It's true, right? Because all of life's problems break down into one of 2 things. Either something moves and it shouldn't, or it doesn't move and it should, right? That's true for doors, relationships, yeah. But see, to me, humor is the WD-40 and duct tape of life. Because like WD-40, it breaks us open so that we see things in a fresh, new way. And like duct tape, it kind of bonds us together as a community to see the commonalities as opposed to the differences. Like that duct tape breaking us open, it helps us come at things in a different way, see things creatively. It's like a billboard I saw driving through Minnesota last summer. There was a big old billboard on the interstate, and at the top it said, Minnesota Cremation Society, which is kind of funny in and of itself that they're advertising, but Minnesota Cremation Society, and it had a picture of a casket, and underneath it said, think outside the box. I love that, you know? A+ for advertising. But it's also what I'm trying to say, you know, sometimes we got to think outside the box. And laughter and humor sometimes can kind of shift our left brain, right brain, and help us get there. I had a case one time defending a big bank in a multi-million-dollar lawsuit over, of all things, a computer glitch. Can you imagine? All came down to a computer, big old mainframe, wouldn't work right. So I had every IT executive in America all around a board table like this. Oh, don't know what to do. Trying to figure out how to fix this computer, all the different ways they could change the mainframe, this and that. Finally, after several hours, one of the old grizzled warriors put his feet up on the table and said, well, why don't we just unplug it? I thought that's so great, to unplug the computer, right? So people started laughing and thought that was so funny. And then all of a sudden, after the laughter, the thinking changed, became more creative, and a solution was found in the next 30 minutes. It helps us see things in a different way, and sometimes it helps us see ourselves in a different way. I don't know about you, but you know, I think I can sometimes get caught up in my own stuff. Maybe that resonates with you. Our stuff becomes all important. Our problems are more important than everybody else's. Our to-do list is longer than everybody else's. Our work is more important than everybody else's, and we forget where we fit in the big scheme of things. It's like the story of the battleship that's out at sea, and all of a sudden the engineer sees an object on the radar and radios ahead and says, we're on a collision course. You need to change your direction 10 degrees to the east. The object radios back, please change your direction 10 degrees to the east. Engineer radios back, we're a 12,000-ton ocean-going vessel. You need to change your direction. Voice comes back, change your direction 10 degrees to the east. Finally, the captain gets on and says, we're United States battleship headed directly for you. Change your direction 10 degrees to the east. The voice comes back, please change your direction 10 degrees to the east. I am a lighthouse. Sometimes we just forget where we fit in the big scheme of things, and laughter can help us get a little perspective. It's also like duct tape that bonds us together, helps us see our commonalities as opposed to our differences. You know, when we laugh together, whether it's a friend or family member or a stranger or even an enemy, our worlds overlap for a split second. And in that moment, we have something in common. I remember a day I walked into my law firm in New York, and I walked to the door, the phone was ringing, I hit the button, and a plaintiff's attorney started screaming at me, and I put him on speaker. Oh, your bank, this and that, and this lawsuit, and you've done all these awful things, blah, blah, blah. And as I was listening to him on speaker, I was shuffling through the papers to find the pleading, and there it was, right there, the lawsuit he threatened to file, and it said at the top, in the District Court of Hawaii, Honolulu. I'm looking out the window, it's January, it's 3 degrees, there's an ice storm, and I'm looking at a burned out warehouse district. And I said, I put him off speaker, I picked up the receiver, and I said, please sue me. Please, please sue me. I'm gonna give you my personal home address. If you'd FedEx it there, that'd be great. I'd like it on the fast track for trial. I'll get all the witnesses, we'll be there Monday. And there was a long pause, and he said, are you crazy? And I said, I wish you could see what I'm looking at. An ice storm in Queens, it's 3 degrees. You're threatening to sue me in a courthouse that's probably overlooking Waikiki Beach. Yes, I'd love for you to sue me. And he starts laughing, I start laughing, and in that moment, the bonds happen and the barriers go down, and we end up settling the case. You see things in a different way. You see the commonalities. Sometimes it's just about dropping the tension. Sometimes maybe it's a little deeper. Sometimes we tend to judge each other on things that have nothing to do with who we are. The color of our skin, the religion we practice, the country we come from. My husband and I are big Harley Davidson people, speaking of judging people. And we take a big motorcycle cross-country trip every year, and a couple of years ago, we got turned away from a motel because they thought we were Hell's Angels. I'm proud of that, really. We zoomed into a Days Inn, and we had our biker leathers, and we were looking pretty bedraggled, and the woman at the desk just looked at me like this, and she goes, we're full. There's not a car in the parking lot. And I said, no, we just want one little room. And she goes, we don't rent to your type. And I was like, well, what type might that be? And she says, biker Hell's Angel people. Well, I had to laugh. You know, I start laughing. Here I am, a Baptist minister. My husband is a retired federal prosecutor. So I'm like, oh, no, I'm just a Baptist minister on vacation. She leans up to me and she goes, you know, the Bible says it's wrong to lie. Well, I'm rarely silent. I didn't know what to say, so I backed out of the Days Inn and I went next door to the Sea and Sand Motel that apparently was biker friendly. We checked in, put on a clean Harley t-shirt, walked back over with my business card that says Reverend Sparks, pastor, Madison Avenue Baptist, put it on the counter and said, Bible also says judge not. It wasn't the kindest thing I could have done. It was so fun, though. Oh. The irony of all this is, she starts laughing and she goes, well, I guess there's a little Hell's Angel in all of us, isn't there? Gave birth to one of my best sermons, I think. It was called Hell's Angels We Have Heard on High. It was about how we judge each other about the silliest of things. And frankly, some of the comedy work I'm doing, I'm most proud of, is right now a comedy tour called the Laugh and Peace Tour with a stand-up rabbi and a Muslim comic. You love it? The three of us are going around to everything from the World Bank to college campuses to put humor and life and faith and society in conversation through humor. You know, Azhar, who's the Muslim comic, Chicago born, talks about things like, he said, well, I don't know why y'all are so upset of having to be at the airport 2 hours beforehand. I have to be there 2 months ahead. And everything is framed around their experience, our experience of living our religion at the time. You know, it also makes it very complicated for me to describe what I do to people. I was getting on Amtrak to go into New York, and a guy sits down and asks the question we all dread, what do you do for a living? And I thought for a split second about saying, well, I'm an ex-lawyer turned stand-up comedian and Baptist minister, and I'm heading into the city to do a comedy show with a stand-up rabbi and a Muslim comic at an Episcopal church at an event that's sponsored by the African American Muslim Women's Association of Brooklyn. And I thought, no, I'm not. I was like, I'm a consultant. Yeah, no. So humor can do many things for us. It can give us perspective. It can bond us together and help us see our commonalities. But I'll tell you where I think humor really blossoms forth, and that's in time of crisis. I'm a breast cancer survivor, and I remember the day going into surgery. The anesthesiologist saw I was quite scared and pointed at the bottle. And he said, don't you worry, this stuff is a great year. Well, I started laughing hysterically. And then I find out later in reading studies that the intake in laughter, when you intake air, it not only drops blood pressure, it increases heart and lung function, increases endorphins, and if you laugh going under, it can cut the recovery time. Who knew that there's physical benefits? There's also just the idea of helping yourself through grief. You know, the first funeral I ever did, there was for a woman in my congregation who never left the house without perfect hair and makeup. And I walked in the funeral home as an open casket. She was 96 at the time she died. Her daughter, Mary, who was 78, said, could you say a prayer over my mother? I'm like, of course. Put my arm around her, put my hand in the casket, touch her arm, and go, ow, ah, which is not a pastoral thing to do at a funeral. And her daughter Mary said, what is wrong with you? And I said, your mother's arm is square. She looked horrified for a moment, and then she started laughing. She pulled out from her mother's arm, inside the sleeve, a box of hair color. She said, Mama was afraid they wouldn't have her color on the other side. So we put Miss Clairol 5A1C in the casket with her. Well, the funeral director's crying, laughing, I'm laughing, you know. And as we laughed together, then we started from tears of laughter to tears of crying, and then back to tears of laughter. And in that moment, everything was bridged, and that was our prayer of grief and mourning and laughter and remembrance. You know, I was in New York on 9/11, and the day after working for the Red Cross, inbound calls looking for folk, and a woman came in on my line and described her husband and then started laughing hysterically. She said, oh, he had this and that on, he worked on this floor, and oh, he had on the worst tie. It was awful. I'm so embarrassed. It had like a little pig and a palm tree, and it didn't match his suit. I told him not to wear it. And I didn't know what to say, and there was this long silence. And she said, I'm sorry if humor seems inappropriate right now. It's all my family and I have left. And it was in that moment I realized that laughter is a lifeboat for people sometimes. I'm not talking about an escape. I'm talking about just a moment. It's like God comes and takes the burden up for just a split second, gives us a little bit of stamina, and then it comes back down. I tell you, the person I learned the most about humor and crisis is from my dad, and I'll leave you all with this story. Herb, don't you love that name, Herb? We lost Herb about 5 years ago, and he died. We lost him. He ran away. And I was with him in the hospital, and he had been in and out of consciousness, and all of a sudden a nurse walks in. She's about 7 years old, maybe, and she looks kind of like Britney Spears, and I hear her say, Mr. Sparks, and Dad kind of opens his eyes and starts focusing on her. Next thing you know, he's sitting up, he's fixing his pajamas, he's got each hair on the side of his head, he's fixing. I'm like, hello, family, been here all day. And she said, well, I'm here to fix your catheter. Oh, yeah, exactly. So I said, well, I got to leave. I'm going to excuse myself. As I'm walking out the room, I hear him take a deep breath and in a thick Southern accent say, well, honey, you just make yourself to home. Oh, Herb. Mortified, so embarrassed. But I have to tell you, after a couple of years of thinking about this and just wanting to crawl under a table, I realized the wisdom in actually what happened. Because, frankly, his situation is no different than ours in a way. In any time in our life, any type of crisis or difficulty, maybe it's a fight at work, a difficulty at home, a traffic jam, or a crisis, a deathbed in a hospital, we have two choices. We can focus on what's wrong and the negative and bring everybody else around us down, or we can focus on some blessing in that moment, something good, something right, like Dad figured he could make somebody smile. You can focus on that and lift everybody else up. It's about legacy. It's about how we're going to be remembered. And I don't mean a profit and loss legacy. I mean our legacy as human beings. We sometimes focus on things that we think at the time are important, maybe our resume or the bank account or how the company's doing or the big stuff that we buy with the resume and the company, but in the end, we know that's really not the important stuff. We know it's not important. I mean, let's face it, no matter how much money or fancy titles or cars or fancy houses that we get in this life, we all know this: the size of our funeral will depend on the weather. And there it is in a nutshell. That's not the important stuff. Ann and Herb, my parents, were big believers in leave things better than you found it. Well, I think at the time that meant my room, but over time I realized there's great wisdom in that too. Leave things better than you found it. Leave your family better than you found it. Leave your workplace better than you found it. Leave your place of worship. Leave your world, your earth, better than you found it. Just learn to laugh at yourself a little bit. Just learn to maybe come at life with a lens of humor. Just leave this world a little better place, one smile at a time. I wish blessings on each and every one of you here today, and happy holidays. Thank you for having me.